My name is Agnes Periwinkle, and I am 82 years old. For 40 years, I was the head librarian in Willow Creek, a town so small that our biggest news is usually the winner of the annual pumpkin growing contest. My life has been quiet, measured in the rustle of turning pages and the scent of old paper. My husband, Arthur, passed 15 years ago. He was a good man, a quiet man who loved crosswords and fixing things with his hands. He left me our small, paid-for house and a pension that, combined with my own, was more than enough. We had one daughter, Clara. Clara was never quiet. She was a storm, all ambition and sharp edges, who had moved to the city and rarely looked back. This story isn't about the simple, loving life Arthur and I built. It's about the day that life was ripped apart by a number. 92 million, to be exact. It was a Tuesday, cold for October, and the oak tree in my yard was shedding its last fiery leaves. Clara's silver Mercedes was an alien spacecraft on my gravel driveway. She breezed in, smelling of expensive perfume and city air, and kissed the air beside my cheek. She didn't come for tea. Clara only came when she wanted something, or when she had news to deliver like a verdict. We sat in the living room, on the very sofa Arthur and I had picked out in 1973. She didn't bother with small talk. "Mom," she started, her voice as crisp as a new dollar bill, "I've been managing Dad's estate paperwork, and something significant has come to light." I knitted my brow. Arthur's estate was settled ages ago. There was nothing left to manage. "It seems," she continued, looking at a file in her lap, not at me, "that Dad had a private investment fund. A hobby, he called it in his notes. Well, this hobby just matured. It's worth $92 million. I felt the air leave my lungs. $92 million. My Arthur? The man who darned his own socks and used a coupon for a $2 coffee? It was impossible. My mind spun, trying to picture that kind of money, trying to understand how Arthur could have kept such a secret. Was our whole life, our careful saving, a lie? Before I could even form a question, Clara closed the file with a sharp snap. Her eyes, when they finally met mine, were as cold and hard as river stones. "Now, I'm telling you this as a courtesy," she said, her voice dropping into a low, serious tone. "He set it up very specifically. It's in a generational skipping trust. It all passes directly to me. Every last cent." I just stared at her, my heart a trapped bird beating against my ribs. "A trust? Skipping me? Clara, what are you saying?" I whispered. She leaned forward, her expression almost pitying, but with an edge of steel I knew all too well. "I'm saying, Mom, that I am now a very, very wealthy woman. And you are not." She stood, smoothing her silk blouse. "I just don't want you getting any ideas. Don't expect a dime from Dad's $92 million. It's all mine." Clara left as quickly as she had arrived, a tornado of perfume and cruelty, leaving my small house in an eerie, deafening silence. The only sound was the tick-tock of the grandfather clock Arthur had built with his own two hands. Tick-tock. Like a countdown. I sat on that sofa for hours, the untouched cup of tea beside me growing cold. $92 million. The number was so large it was meaningless. What mattered was the betrayal. It felt like Arthur had died all over again. Had he? Had the man I loved, the man who held my hand while I gave birth to Clara, the man who cried at our son's funeral, had he been a stranger all along? The next day, the phone rang. It was Clara. "No, hello, no, how are you?" "Just business." "Mom, I'm sending an appraiser over on Friday. We need to get a valuation on the house and its contents for the estate sale." I gripped the receiver, my knuckles white. "What?" "Clara, this is my house. I live here." I heard her sigh, a sound of pure impatience. "Be realistic, Mom. You're 82. You can't possibly manage a whole house." I'm looking at some lovely retirement communities for you. The kind with assisted living. The words hung in the air, nursing home. She wasn't just taking the money, she was taking my life. She was erasing me. Clara, your father would never. I started, but she cut me off, her voice sharp. Dad's not here, is he? I'm in charge now. And I'm doing what's best. The appraiser comes at 10. Make sure you're there to let him in. The line clicked dead. I stood there, shaking, looking at the photographs on my mantel. Me and Arthur on our wedding day. Our family at the beach. Clara, age 5, sitting on his shoulders. This was the same woman who was now trying to sell my home out from under me, to put me in a home while she swam in $92 million. The grief I felt was replaced by something else. A cold, slow-burning anger. She thought I was just a frail old woman. She thought I was already gone. She was wrong. That night, I didn't sleep. I walked the halls of my own home, touching the furniture, the wallpaper, the door frames. Every object held a memory of Arthur. And with every memory, the doubt grew stronger. This wasn't the man I knew. The man who patched our roof himself to save money. The man who read Goodnight Moon to Clara until the pages fell out. He would not do this. He would not leave me destitute. He would not leave his entire fortune to a woman who would throw her own mother out on the street. Which meant one of two things: either Arthur was a monster, or Clara was lying. And I was going to find out which. My path led me to Arthur's study. It was a small room, smelling faintly of old paper, pipe tobacco, and the wood polish he loved. I hadn't touched it much since he passed. It was his sanctuary. Clara had never been allowed in here. This is where I think, Agnes, he'd say with a wink. A man needs a thinking room. At his desk, an old oak roll-top, I sat in his worn leather chair. I tried the drawers. All unlocked, filled with old pens, tax returns from the 90s, and paper clips. All except one. The bottom right drawer. It was locked. I rattled it. Solid. I didn't have a key. I sat back, my heart pounding. What was in there? I thought back, trying to remember. Arthur was a man of habits, of secret hiding places. Think, Agnes, think. And then it hit me. The garage. His workbench. He always said, a smart man keeps a spare, but not where a fool would look. I shuffled to the cold garage, the single bulb flickering overhead. I ran my trembling fingers along the underside of his workbench, past the cobwebs, until my nails hit a small piece of metal. It was a small, brass key, held in place by a brittle piece of old tape. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely pull it free. I clutched it to my chest and hurried back to the study. I slid the key into the lock. It was stiff from disuse, but with a hard turn, I heard a satisfying click. The drawer slid open with a soft shush of old wood. It wasn't full of cash or gold bars. It was just files, neat and tidy, just like Arthur. But one file, a thick, dark blue accordion folder, caught my eye. It was labeled with Arthur's neat, careful handwriting. But it didn't say Trust or Clara. It said, W.C. Ventures. Willow Creek Ventures. I'd never heard of it. My fingers trembled as I untied the small string holding it closed. Inside, there weren't trust documents. There was a stack of stock certificates for companies I'd never heard of, names like Intel and Microsoft from the early 1980s. There was an old, yellowed ledger book. And on top of it all, there was a single, folded document. A formal partnership agreement. I unfolded it. The document was dated March 14, 1981. It was an agreement for a private investment fund, Willow Creek Ventures. I scanned the page, my eyes searching for the names. And there, at the bottom, were the signatures of the two founding partners. Suddenly, I wasn't an 82-year-old woman in a dusty study. I was 28 again, standing in this very house, which was then new and smelled of fresh paint. The roof was leaking. Arthur had just lost his job at the mill, and Clara was just a baby, crying in her crib. I had just received a small inheritance from my great-aunt Elspeth. It was $5,000. It was all the money we had in the world. Arthur had come to me, his face pale with worry but his eyes bright with an idea. He'd been reading about these new computer companies out west. He called them the future. Agnes, he'd said, holding my hands. It's a gamble. A wild one. But these men, they're building something new. If I could just buy in, even a little. I remember looking at the water stain on the ceiling, then at my husband's desperate, hopeful face. I made a choice. We do it, I said. But we do it together. It's my money, your idea. We'll be partners. He had hugged me so tight I thought my ribs would crack. But Artie, I'd said, pulling back. Let's use my old name. My maiden name. Thorne. Just to keep it separate. A nest egg. Our secret. Arthur had laughed and kissed my forehead. Agnes Thorne, he'd said. My secret weapon. We'd sent the money. And we'd forgotten about it. The roof got fixed. Arthur got his job at the library. Life went on. The $5,000 gamble became a family story we told, laughing at our foolishness. But Arthur hadn't forgotten. He'd kept the file. He'd tended to it. He'd watched it grow. And that $5,000, our secret seed, had grown into $92 million. This wasn't his money. It was our money. This wasn't a trust. It was a partnership. And Clara. Clara didn't know a thing about Agnes Thorne. My mind was clear for the first time in days. This wasn't grief. It was battle. Clara had her high-powered city lawyers. I was a librarian from Willow Creek. I needed help. I couldn't just call the number on the back of the phone book. I needed someone smart, someone tough, and someone who would believe me. Then I remembered a boy. A young man, Elias Rowe, who used to come into my library every day after school. He was smart as a whip, but his family had no money. I'd helped him study for his exams, found him scholarships, and wrote his college recommendation letter. He'd gone on to law school. Now, he was a partner at a big firm in the city, the one on Chestnut Street. I found the number and dialed, my old rotary phone feeling strange and heavy. When his secretary put me through, his voice was deep, professional, until I said my name. Mrs. Periwinkle? Agnes? Is that really you? His voice warmed instantly. I told him everything. The $92 million. Clara's visit. The threat of the nursing home. The appraiser. And then, I told him about the locked drawer, the blue folder, and the name Agnes Thorne. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. For a moment, I was terrified he wouldn't believe me. Then, he spoke, and his voice was no longer warm. It was cold steel. Agnes, he said, I want you to sit tight. Do not let the appraiser in. Do not answer the phone. I am sending a car for you. You're coming to my office, and you are bringing that blue folder. What your daughter is doing is called undue influence and elder abuse. And what you have. Agnes, that's not just a file. That's a bomb. And we're going to light the fuse. For the first time since Clara's visit, I smiled. The official reading was set for the following Monday at the offices of Clara's lawyers, Smith, Davidson, and Hyde. Elias had arranged everything. A sleek black car, just like Clara's, picked me up. I wore my best Sunday coat, the navy blue one, and clutched my purse, which now held the blue accordion file. When I walked into the glass and chrome boardroom, Clara was already there, sipping an espresso, looking like a queen holding court. She was surrounded by 3 lawyers who all looked identical in their dark, expensive suits. She saw me and her face tightened. "Mom. I didn't think you'd come. I told you this was just a formality." "Hello, Clara," I said, my voice steady. Elias Rowe, looking sharp and 10 feet tall in his own perfect suit, pulled out a chair for me. Clara's eyes narrowed, taking in Elias. "And who is this?" she sneered. "This is my legal counsel, Mr. Rowe," I said calmly. Clara laughed, a short, ugly sound. "Legal counsel? Mom, don't be ridiculous. You can't afford him." "That's enough, Ms. Davidson," Elias said, his voice cutting through the room. "We are here for the reading of Mr. Arthur Periwinkle's last will and testament. Shall we begin?" Clara gave me one last look, a look of pure, venomous pity. "Fine," she snapped. "Let's get this over with. I have a 2 p.m. call with my wealth manager." She leaned back, crossing her legs, the picture of arrogant confidence. She thought this was her coronation. She had no idea it was her execution. I sat quietly, my hands folded on the table, and I waited. The trap was set. All we had to do was wait for her to walk into it. Clara's lawyer, a man named Hyde, cleared his throat and began to read. "I, Arthur J. Periwinkle, being of sound mind and body." He droned on through the usual legal language. Clara was tapping her pen on the table, visibly bored. "And as to the remainder of my estate, including my personal pension, my bank accounts, and my primary residence located at 412 Evergreen Lane, Willow Creek, I leave it all, in its entirety, to my beloved wife, Agnes Periwinkle." I breathed out slowly. Arthur had protected me. The house was mine. The pension was mine. But Clara shot up from her chair. "What? That's it? Where's the rest? Where is the $92 million? Her lawyer, Mr. Hyde, looked completely baffled. He shuffled his papers. "Ms. Davidson, I'm afraid I don't know what you're talking about. The estate's total valuation, not including the house, is approximately $47,000. There is no $92 million trust. There is no mention of any such asset in this will." Clara's face went from pale to a deep, blotchy red. "You're incompetent," she shrieked. "He told me. My father told me about the trust. Look again." "There is nothing to look at, Ms. Davidson," Mr. Hyde said, clearly offended. "The estate's assets are what they are." Clara whirled on me. "You," she hissed, her finger jabbing the air. "What did you do? You had him declared incompetent. You tricked him. I'll contest this. I'll have you thrown in a state home. That will be quite enough, Ms. Davidson." Elias Rowe's voice was quiet, but it silenced the room. He stood and placed the blue accordion file on the polished table with a soft thud. "There seems to be a misunderstanding," Elias said, his voice smooth as silk. "My client, Mrs. Periwinkle, is not here to discuss the $47,000 in your father's checking account. We are here to discuss the Willow Creek Ventures Partnership Fund, which, as of this morning, is valued at $92,400,000. Clara's head snapped toward him, her eyes wide. "That's it. That's the fund." "That's mine," she said, a triumphant, greedy smile spreading across her face. "See? I told you." Elias nodded, opening the file. "Yes, this is the fund. And here," he said, sliding the original 1981 partnership agreement across the table, "is the founding document." Clara grabbed it. She read the first name. Arthur J. Periwinkle. Yes. Then she read the second name. her brow furrowed in confusion. Her voice was a suspicious whisper. Agnes E. Thorne. Who the hell is Agnes Thorne? She looked up, her eyes scanning the room, landing on me with pure contempt. Is this who he was hiding it for? His mistress? I stood up slowly, my chair scraping softly on the floor. Every eye was on me. I looked at my daughter. The girl I had raised, the woman who had tried to destroy me. No, Clara, I said, my voice as clear and strong as a bell. He didn't have a mistress. I paused, letting the silence stretch, watching the color drain from her face as the realization began to dawn. My name, I said, is Agnes. And Thorne was my maiden name. Arthur and I started that fund together, with my inheritance, 40 years ago. It's a 50-50 partnership. Clara turned a shade of white I had never seen before. She looked from the paper, to me, and back to the paper. No, that's not possible. He said it was his. Her voice was a choked gasp. Elias Rowe continued, his voice void of all emotion. It is possible. And it is true. According to this legally binding partnership, 50% of the fund, or $46.2 million, belonged to Arthur Periwinkle. As his sole heir, per the will we just read, that portion passes to his wife, Agnes. The other 50%, the other $46.2 million, well, that already belongs to Agnes Periwinkle, née Thorne. It was never part of the estate to begin with. Clara sank into her chair, her mouth opening and closing, but no sound came out. She, the high-powered executive, had been undone by a librarian who knew how to read the fine print. She wasn't getting $92 million. She wasn't getting $46 million. She was getting nothing. All of it was mine. My daughter, who had looked me in the eye and told me not to expect a dime, was now the one left with empty hands. I looked at her, and I felt nothing. Not anger. Not even victory. Just a deep, profound pity. She had been so blinded by greed she couldn't see the truth that was right in front of her. I picked up the blue folder and tucked it back into my purse. You were right about one thing, Clara, I said quietly, walking toward the door. Dad's not here. But I am. I stopped and looked back at her, a broken, pale woman in a billion-dollar boardroom. And, Clara? I said. Don't bother with the appraiser. I've decided I'm keeping the house. I walked out of that office, with Mr. Rowe by my side, and stepped out into the bright, clear sunlight, leaving my daughter behind in the shadow she had created for herself. My name is Agnes Periwinkle, and my story was far from over. Agnes got her justice. What a powerful ending. What do you think Agnes should do with the money? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to subscribe for more empowering stories just like this.